Welcome to a new fantasy adventure on Dreamscape. This short story will take you to a world full of adventure and surprises. Join a lonely wanderer on his journey through a dangerous wilderness. The biggest gesture you can give me is a like. If you like my stories, feel free to leave a subscription and activate the bell so you don't miss any more stories. Well then, let's dive into the story. The Lonely Wanderer. The wanderer wandered lonely through the desolate expanses of the endless plain. For many days now, he had not seen a soul. Only the barren rocks and scrawny bushes, which lined his path now and then, were company for him. But that did not bother him. He was used to being alone. Quietly, he strode through the dusty ground, his cloak-like cape pulled tightly around his shoulders. The weather was mild, a gentle breeze ruffling the tall grass. In the distance, the hiker could see the snow-capped peaks of the Zackenberg Range stretching across the horizon like a giant wall. Danger lurked up there in the lonely mountains and valleys. Wild beasts and cruel creatures roamed this land, always in search of prey. Normal travelers avoided the jagged mountains. But the wanderer was not afraid. He knew the dangers of this wilderness. For many years now, he had been wandering through these inhospitable regions in search of adventure and challenge. Often he was the only person on the road for weeks at a time. But the loneliness had become dear to him. Suddenly, the wanderer stopped and listened. There, a soft whimpering could be heard. Cautiously, he went on and peered searchingly around. There, crouching between some withered bushes, was a dog with an injured leg, howling piteously.
"Well, you poor animal,"
the hiker spoke kindly.
"you're in a lot of trouble, aren't you? Let me help you."
Carefully, he lifted the dog and examined the injured leg. It was sprained, but not broken. The hiker knew what to do. He deftly cut strips from his cloak and gently bandaged the dog's leg with them. The dog wagged its tail gratefully and licked the man's weather-beaten face.
"There you go, that's all right. But what are you doing here all alone in the middle of nowhere, my friend?"
the hiker asked, scratching the dog behind the ears. The dog whined softly. Then the man noticed a leather collar with a small metal tag.
"Well, you belong to someone. Lost in the hunt, huh?"
The dog yelped in agreement.
"Then I'd best take you back home."
the hiker decided.
"Where did we come from? Let me see."
The dog jumped up and limped west a bit. Apparently, he wanted to show the way back.
"All right, my friend. Let's go then."
The hiker followed the dog across the steppe. After a few hours, they came to a forest that loomed darkly before them. Cautiously, they entered the undergrowth. Suddenly the dog stopped and growled softly. The hiker also sensed that danger was in the air. Something evil lurked here in the dark forest. The birds fell silent, no breeze stirred. There, a murmur was to be heard. It sounded deep and rumbling, almost like thunder. But the hiker knew that this was not a natural sound. Slowly, he reached under his cloak and pulled out a long, sharp sword. He peered strained between the dense tree trunks. Suddenly, a loud crash. Two huge claws grabbed a tree and tore it out of the ground, roots and all. A shapeless shadow appeared, enormous wings stretched out. It was a dragon. Immediately the hiker stood protectively in front of the dog, blade raised for battle. The beast emitted a deafening roar and spewed a fountain of fire into the sky. Then it attacked. With a speed that one would not have expected from such a huge body, the dragon shot towards the wanderer, claws raised to strike. The latter deftly dodged and struck the beast on the flank. The dragon hissed angrily. Thus began a fierce battle between man and beast. The wanderer dodged the fire and claw blows, always trying to protect the frightened beast behind him. His sword flashed in the twilight, striking scales and wings. Finally, the wanderer managed to inflict a deep wound on the dragon's neck. Roaring in pain, the beast backed away, flapping its wings. With a final angry snarl, it rose into the air and flew away. Exhausted, the wanderer put away his sword. The fight had cost him a lot of strength. But for today they had banished the danger.
"Come, my friend, let us go on,"
he said to the dog. Cautiously, they continued their way through the dark forest. Suddenly lights appeared between the trees. They were torches and campfires, people. The dog began to bark excitedly and ran. They reached a valley basin where there were several wooden huts. Men with hunting rifles and traps sat around the fire, apparently a village of poachers and trappers. When they spotted the hiker, they jumped up in alarm and pointed their guns at him. But at that moment the dog came running, wagging its tail joyfully.
"Well, that's Master Eric's hunting dog. Where did he suddenly come from?"
One of the men shouted in amazement. Immediately they lowered their weapons. The hiker told them how he had found the injured dog in the steppe and brought it here.
"That's a bold deed,"
praised the village elder.
"You have done our Master Eric a great service. The dog has become dear to his heart, and he cared for him very much."
They invited the wanderer to rest with them. That night they dined and laughed around the warm fire. The wanderer felt his heart soar. He was thanked for a good deed, and he had found new friends in the loneliness of the wilderness.